Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Winning Digital Customers Show. Are you getting in that Valentine's Day mood? It's the season of love as we head into Valentine's Day. And today we will be talking about one of my favorite topics, customer love. Because after all, as we head into Valentine's Day, why should we only be thinking about the love of our family and the love of our boyfriends or girlfriends or spouses? Let's also talk about the love of our customers. Because you know what? Customer love is actually the number one most important component to business success. That might be a controversial statement, but I am going to show you today why that is incontrovertibly true. And not only that, what you can do about it. In other words, what you can do to win the love of your customers. So let's get started. Slides, please. There we go. Customer love. So, I learned about customer love from a perhaps a surprising place. My son, Joseph, there he is at 5. He's 8 years old now, though. And this idea of customer love really started a couple years ago. Joseph likes to send group texts to our family. We have a family group chat of news items that he thinks are important, that we need to know about, like the sightings of giant squid off the coast of Japan. And so one day I received a text from Joseph that said he had seen the news article that all of the Toys R Us stores would be closing. This was, what is it now, a couple years ago maybe? I saw that and I thought, and then following that I got a little follow-up, forever, with the RIP emoji. So I saw that and I thought, I should probably go check in with Joseph, see how he's doing. Poor kid, Toys R Us closing, it must be crushing him. So I went and found him, not unexpectedly at the kitchen iMac, where he usually is sending his texts. And I said, "Hey, Joseph, how you doing? I saw your message. How you feeling about Toys R Us closing?" And he said, "I don't care." And I was taken aback by that. And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, Dad, we can just order whatever we want from Amazon." And it was at that moment that I realized the real reason Toys R Us went out of business. Because some people say the problem that Toys R Us had was too much leveraged debt. And they did have a lot of debt, there's no question. Some people say it's because downloadable video games made it so that there was less demand for physical toys. And that's true, there's been a little bit of a dip. But I would argue that both of these could have been overcome. They're just business problems that could have been solved. Many companies have gotten themselves out of debt. Many companies have figured out how to adjust to a digital world. But Toys R Us had a more profound problem. What Toys R Us really died from was a lack of love. See, when I was Joe's age, I did love things. I did love Toys R Us. And I also loved my Kodak camera with its flash bulbs. I loved Speed Racer. I loved my Atari. I loved the International House of Pancakes. And a few decades later, I loved Borders books. Remember them? I loved Melrose Place. Never would miss a Monday night episode. And I loved my BlackBerry. And now today, I love Alexa. I love my iMac. I love Game of Thrones.
Sorry, I'm not sure about that.
That's Alexa. Did you hear that? She's talking because she heard me say her name. And I'm back to loving the International House of Pancakes. So let me ask, what about you? What do you love? Is it Fortnite, Snapchat, Disney, Lululemon? Is it Chipotle? More importantly, though, do your customers love your business? See, I would argue again that this is the single most important characteristic that determines the success of any business. And let me just clarify, when I say love, what do I mean by love? Because I love my wife and I love my Ford Mustang, but not in exactly the same way, right? So when I say love in this context, I'm talking about the desire of your customers to be connected with a given brand, hopefully your brand, and the faith that the brand will give you what you need. When we do consumer research and we ask customers if they love Starbucks, many say yes. When we ask if they love Citibank, very few say yes. These customers understand what we mean when we talk about the idea of the love of a brand. And by the way, sometimes when I talk about this, people say, well, aren't you just using another word to describe loyalty? And I would say, you can call it that if you want, but I don't, because love is an emotion. It's an emotional connection, a strong emotional connection. The word loyalty in the English language, it can be an emotion when we talk about the loyalty that soldiers on the battlefield have towards their fellow soldiers, but this is not how we use the word loyalty in business today. When we talk about loyalty in business today, we are talking about loyalty as a behavior. And what is that behavior? It's the behavior of repeated transactions, right? If I fly the same airline every week or every month, if I go to the same gas station every time I fuel up, this is repeated transactions that we refer to as loyalty. And certainly we want that kind of behavior, but let's not confuse that with an emotion like love. So if we want this love, how do we know if we have it? How do we know if we have customer love? How do we know if any particular customer has love for any particular brand? Well, I'm going to suggest to you that there's actually a continuum of levels of emotional connection that customers have towards any given brand. And at the top is this idea of being loved. But there are gradients below that can still be powerful and useful. The one right below it we call resonant, meaning you have a strong connection to the brand, but not quite at the level of love. Then there's brands that are relevant. They're important in your life, but you might not have a strong emotional connection to them. Then we have brands that are irrelevant. Pretty much, you know that they exist, but they don't mean anything to you. You really don't care about them one way or the other. And then we have brands that are non-existent. And non-existent can mean they're truly non-existent, like they're totally out of business, or at least they're not existent to that customer, meaning there's essentially no level of awareness. That brand is not on the radar of that customer at all. And brands, of course, move up and down this continuum. Many of the brands that we've sadly recently seen go out of business were at one time loved, or at least resonant. And of course, every brand starts life as being non-existent, right? I mean, there was a time before there was an Apple, and even when Apple was first created, they were in a garage and very few people knew about them. So to the vast majority of the world, they were non-existent. And then over time, they moved up this continuum. Likewise, Google, likewise, Facebook, likewise, Amazon, likewise, your brand came from nothing and moved its way up the scale, maybe all the way up to being loved, maybe not. Maybe you're working at a brand that used to be loved and has fallen down to resonant or relevant. I don't know, your individual situation. But brands exist somewhere along this continuum in terms of the feelings that their customers have toward them. And of course, not every single customer is going to have the same feeling towards your brand. There could be some to whom you're loved, there could be some to whom you're relevant, and some to whom you're non-existent. Obviously, the majority of your customers and how they feel kind of form that main answer for where your brand exists. So when we do research, we like to look at a sampling of consumers to understand, or customers of a given business or prospective customers to understand where that brand exists in the emotional sort of gradient for each individual customer. And then we can aggregate that data together and look at it in total and look at it by segments like female versus male, by age, by geography, and other things like that. So let's just look at a few examples. Let's start with someone like Disney, that I would consider to be a loved brand. And let's just talk about a little bit the value of being a loved brand. So there's many ways one could demonstrate the tremendous business success of a brand like Disney. But just as one example, this is what you can do when you're a loved brand. Disney launched on November 12th, 2019, a new streaming service called Disney Plus to compete with the likes of Hulu, Netflix, etc. Within 3 months of launching that streaming service, they had 28.6 million customers, surpassing Hulu that's been in this business for more than 10 years and being nearly half the total subscriber base of Netflix, which is clearly the market leader. That's the kind of thing that you can do when you're a loved brand, when customers trust you, when they look to you for solutions. Another brand that I think to many of their customers would fall into that category of being loved would be Apple. So if you look at Apple over the last 5 years, and this graph is from, I don't know, sometime probably 6 or 8 months ago. So this slides I've used before. So this has probably gone up even more since then. I'm certain that it has. But even at that point, over a 5-year period, Apple had 440% growth in the value. If you held Apple stock for that 5-year period, it was almost going up 100% every year, right? Almost 500% in 5 years. That's the kind of increased value that you see in the marketplace for a brand that is loved. Now, of course, not every loved brand has the exact same growth, but I'm just trying to give you examples of the economic and business benefits of being a loved brand. Now, let's take a look at another brand that I would say is probably a notch down on my loved scale, which is the brand Verizon. For many people that we have done research with, Verizon is what I would call a resonant brand. People really like the Verizon brand. They appreciate the fact that they provide really fast internet and a great cable alternative. Their mobile service has been often measured as one of the best in terms of coverage and other things and speed. So Verizon is a brand that is important to people. And they've seen 33% growth in the 5-year period that we're showing in this particular graph. So this is the kind of, good, strong performance that you could see from a brand over time that is resonant, but clearly not the level of being loved. Now let's take a look at RadioShack. RadioShack is a brand which is probably to many people not even what we would say relevant, but really at this point largely irrelevant. In 2004, RadioShack had something like 7,500 stores in the US. Some people are amazed by this slide. They're like, RadioShack still exists? Yeah, they have like a couple hundred stores left, or at least they did before coronavirus. So, but all the ones around me are gone. So I'm not quite sure where these remaining RadioShack stores are. But clearly, this is a business that failed to keep pace with the times, failed to maintain customer love. And I don't know if they ever had love. They might have just been as high as resonant, certainly, or relevant. But at this point, for most people, they're an irrelevant brand, despite being in a space, electronic space, that is more important than ever to our day-to-day lives. So this is some of the impact. And of course, there are other brands that have become totally irrelevant. They are out of business, like, let's say, for example, Sports Authority. So it's very valuable to move your way up this scale and to try to become a loved brand. Let's talk about how to tell whether you are a loved brand, or to tell how any individual, what level of this continuum they feel towards a given brand. Here's the test that we do. It's actually quite simple. We ask the question, how would you feel if a given brand was gone? So let's take a brand like Macy's. Ask yourself, how would I feel if Macy's was gone? I said to you, Macy's is out of business, the same way my son sent me that text, just announced that, thank God this is not the case. This is just a hypothetical. I'm just using this brand as an example. If they were gone, if they were out of business, there was no more Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, this brand is no more. So what's your emotional reaction? If you feel devastated, really like someone gave you a gut punch, like if someone said to you, Apple's gone, they're no more. There's a for sale sign on that big round building they made in Cupertino. And yeah, you won't be able to buy any more Apple products. There's no more iTunes. Your iPhone is and all iPhones are gone. Pretty much they've gone the way of Compaq or whatever, right? They are out of business completely. A lot of people would really be devastated by that. Maybe not you, I don't know, but a lot of people would. That's the sign of a loved brand. Now, what if you just feel like, gosh, that's a bummer. I'm not devastated. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, but gee, I'm really sorry to hear that. I'm genuinely a little bit saddened to hear that brand is no longer around. I can no longer go to, if someone said someone said to me, I could no longer go to Burger King, I'd be like, really? Oh man, I like Burger King. That sucks. I certainly wouldn't be devastated. I wouldn't feel like a universal wrong had been committed, but I'd have that little feeling, that a little emotional reaction of being bummed. So consider for any brand, if you feel that way, that means it's a resonant brand. It's a brand you really care about. You really believe it gives you something. I like the grilled chicken sandwiches at Burger King, for example. Now, if your response is, I don't really feel anything, but I needed to know that, right? It's good. Thank you for telling me, because I needed that information. For example, if someone told me that British Petroleum no longer existed, well, as it happens, the closest gas station to my house is a British Petroleum gas station. And so I have to go there. That's where I go. That's where I get my gas, right? Don't really care about them, but they are part of my life. They are relevant to me. That brand is relevant because I go there. And so if they're out of business, I go, oh, I better plan to go left instead of right on Masonicus Road the next time I need gas, because I'm going to have to go to Amco. I'm not going to be able to go to British Petroleum, right? And I need to drive, 1 more minute to get there. So that means the brand is relevant. It's just something you needed to know. And if you don't care, if someone says, did you know that company X is out of business? And you're like, why are you wasting my time telling me this? This has no impact on my life. Then that is a brand that's irrelevant. And I don't think I have a slide for it, but if someone says this brand is non-existent and you say, who? Or you say, I didn't even realize they were still in existence, then that was a brand that is non-existent. So if you want to find out how your customers feel about you, just ask them this question. Do a survey, do interviews, say, if our brand was gone tomorrow, how would you feel? And describe these different stages, and you'll be able to get a sense of how those customers feel about you. Do you want to know? You might feel like you don't want to know, but I'm going to show you why you should want to know, because there's something you can do about it. There's a way that you could improve your level of customer love. So what is that? It's what we call the customer love transformation formula, and it's the basis for my book, Winning Digital Customers. Because what we've learned is that I'm going to take this away for a second, there are 3 main components to inspiring that feeling of love in your customer. And if you achieve all 3 of these, you are highly likely to achieve that love. And if you achieve some of these, well, you're going to be moving up that scale. The more you achieve of these 3 things, the more likely you are to be at least resonant or at least relevant. And if you're not achieving any of these things, you're probably irrelevant. And here are the 3 things. It's a pyramid. The bottom level of the pyramid is to meet the needs of the customer extremely consistently. Of course, not every need of the customer, but whatever the domain is that you are focused on, whether it's healthcare or quick service food or selling apparel or dog walking or whatever it may be. That customer can count on you to meet their needs. Will that make them love you? No. But that's the foundation. If you do not do that, if Apple did not consistently deliver the product that you ordered and it worked as you expected, then no matter how much you might like their Think Different ad campaign or whatever else, you're not going to love that brand. You're not even possibly going to want to do business with that brand. So that's the base of the pyramid. The second level of the pyramid is to occasionally delight the customer. What creates delight? Delight is something good that exceeds the customer's expectations, right? If I go to the grocery store and the things that I want are on the shelf and I can get through the checkout line in a reasonable period of time, that's not going to delight me. I'm not going to go home and say, honey, you won't believe what a great experience I had at the supermarket. That's just meeting my needs. But if I go to the supermarket and the manager comes running up to me and he says, Howard, I know you really like the chocolate chip mint ice cream from a particular company that we were out of when you were here a week ago. And so I made sure that we ordered it and I saved some for you in the back. And I just noticed that you came in. And so let me run to the back right now because I wanted to make sure you had it. That would delight me, right? That's not something I expect from the grocery store. So you don't have to do it every day, but periodically delighting the customer is a second component of that love formula. And the third component is to resonate, which means to stand for something the customer cares about, which can mean a political view like companies like Chick-fil-A or Kenneth Cole take, but it can also just be a value. Like I think most people believe that Apple stands for something. They believe that Disney stands for something. They believe that Ben & Jerry's stands for something. Even Walmart stands for something, right? They stand for you deserve low prices. There are a lot of brands, however, that don't really seem to stand for anything. And often that is what keeps brands who otherwise do a great job of meeting needs and delighting people from really being loved. Maybe that's why Verizon's not truly loved, at least to many customers. They're a great company. They meet my needs. They occasionally do something extra, maybe not that often, but occasionally. But you know, what do they really stand for? I'm not sure I know. And so the opportunity to love is not really there. And another way to look at these three levels is from an emotional perspective. How does it make the customer feel? If you feel like that brand consistently meets your needs, then it makes you feel understood. Because in order to meet your needs, they have to understand. They know what matters to you and they deliver it. That is the feeling you get from having your needs met consistently. When you are occasionally delighted, you additionally feel that that brand cares about me. They don't just understand me, but I'm valuable to them. And, you know, we so often say to our customers, dear valued customer, you know, and that doesn't mean anything to most customers. That's just boilerplate language. But actions that demonstrate that you care individually about that customer, that creates delight, or that feeling, or I should say it the other way. The delight experience yields the feeling that that brand cares about them. And after all, think about this even in your personal relationships. Is this what you look for in somebody that you love and that you are engaged in a relationship with, you'd call love? They get me, right? That's the same as they understand me. They care about me, right? If someone gets me but doesn't care about me, it's hard to be in love with them, you know? And then lastly, they are like me. And that's what the resonation is about. I feel like, wow, they care about some of the same things that I care about. And so that's a key part of being resonant, by the way. It's not just that the company stands for something, they stand for something that I resonate with. In fact, some companies stand for something. For example, we had a new Chick-fil-A that opened up near us, and I am amazed. Every time I drive by that Chick-fil-A, there's like a drive-in line, like 30 cars long. They have a police presence at Chick-fil-A, like continuously, every day, just to make sure that, I guess, the cars, I guess because they feel it's potentially a problem because there's so many cars, there's so much demand for Chick-fil-A. Clearly, there are people who love the Chick-fil-A brand, but not me. Because one of the components of Chick-fil-A's brand is that they have really gone on record as standing for very conservative social values that I do not share. So they may have great chicken. I think years ago I had Chick-fil-A and I don't even remember, but let's just assume it was great. But I would not love that brand because they actually anti-resonate with me. But one thing that's true is that if you look at companies like Chick-fil-A or like Nike that truly stand for something, it usually attracts more love than it repels. Meaning, in most cases, you're far better off being a brand that stands for something, understanding that some people will be repelled by that, but other people will be massively attracted to that. Okay. So, how do you accomplish this? How do you, it sounds simple. Oh, only 3 levels of a pyramid. Should be no problem. All we have to do is meet their needs, delight them, and stand for something that they care about. But how do you do that? What are the things that you need to do in order to meet their needs? What would delight the customer? I mean, gosh, there's a million things you could potentially do to delight the customer, right? You could send them money in the mail. You could call them up and tell them that you love them. You could do all kinds of things. Of course, they may not all delight the customer because it only delights the customer if it's what? Positive and unexpected. So you have to really understand the customer, you know, to understand what are their needs, to determine how and whether you're even meeting them consistently. And if you're not, what would meet them consistently, and to figure out what those extra things are and to understand what are the values that your customers would find attractive. And by the way, you have to keep looking at these, keep answering these questions because the answers are not static. Many of the brands that we talked about earlier that used to be loved and are no longer loved, it is because they are no longer meeting the needs of their customers, delighting them and resonating with them in the way that they used to. Now, why would that be? Well, it could be because the brand changed, but more often it's because the brand didn't change. More often it's because they had a formula that worked and then the world changed. Let's face it. We talk about all the time on this show, digital transformation. The needs of our customers have been massively changed over the last decade. And I would say even massively changed over the last year with coronavirus as a result of shifts in consumer behavioral patterns as a result of digital. And of course, these are not the only changes in society. Many other things are changing in our world all the time, customer mindsets, preferences, values, but digital is, I believe, the single largest factor in the changing needs and preferences and even values of our customers. And so the key is to be able to understand what is it that will give you, what can you do to fulfill the 3 levels of the love pyramid, and then to, of course, seek to do that, but also to keep your finger on the pulse of your customer, because over time, that's likely to change. To keep the love, you have to change with the times. And we already talked about the fact that what's changing is digital. And I'll just end by saying that my book, Winning Digital Customers, yes, this was all just a promo for the book. Now, hopefully this is useful to you on its own, but I can only cover so much in a almost 30-minute live cast. But my book, Winning Digital Customers, has a 5-step roadmap to how very specifically to both identify a clear vision of how you need to change your customer experience to achieve the highest possible level of customer love, and then a roadmap to how to execute it. Because even when you know what to do, it's one thing to know what to do, it's another thing to get it done, especially within a large organization. So I can't go into all of that on this live cast today because I'm pretty nearly at time. But I want to encourage you to check out my book, Winning Digital Customers. It's available on Amazon. If you go to wdc.ht/free chapter, you can download the first chapter of the book as a PDF, which talks all about customer love and also tees up the 5 steps of our customer love digital transformation formula, which I haven't had time to talk about here, but it talks about what are the high-level activities to get you to customer love. And then the rest of the book breaks down those different areas and provides you very specific activities and techniques that are proven through my colleagues and my 20+ years working with large companies on this journey of helping them digitally transform to win the love of their customers and, frankly, to win the wallets of their customers and improve their business results. So I encourage you to check that out. I thank you for watching and listening today. It's been awesome spending this pre-Valentine's Day time with you. I wish you a wonderful Valentine's Day, all the love of your family, of your friends, and your customers. With that, have an awesome day, and I will see you next time.